Hey everyone, how are you doing today? My name is Nikki, and for those that don't know me, I am a nurse and the CEO of Transform Nursing. And I wanted to talk to you live today about a really cool topic. And the title is, Have We Achieved Equity in Nursing? A Look Back and a Look Forward. So, as usual, I'm doing my live in my car. I'm always on the go. I'm actually right outside of Trader Joe's. But just out in the community, and I love being in the community. So just to kind of give you perspective, hey Shannon, good to see you on. Give you a little bit of background about me. I've been a nurse for 14 years. I have practiced in everything from cardiac critical care nursing to international nursing to now what I've been doing most recently, which is working with folks living with HIV and community-based nursing. And it's work that I absolutely love to do. And I wanted to talk about equity because it's so important to the conversation for nurses in general. And nurses really, I believe, are going to be so pivotal and so impactful in the way that we begin to think about health policy and the way we think about the work that we do in nursing in general. Hi, Nan. Good to see you on. So before I even really dive into our topic, which again is, have we achieved equity in nursing? A look back and a look forward. I wanted to share with you about a fantastic conference that I was able to attend and actually present and be a panelist at yesterday, which was really super fun. It was for the Healthcare Career Advancement Program, and it was out of Crystal City in Arlington, Virginia. And this is a labor union that partners with SEIU 1199 and does some really phenomenal work. And while I was in the room, I was listening to other people speaking. I was listening to policymakers. Congressman Hakeem Jeffries was actually there, which is really powerful, from New York. But what I was hearing more and more throughout the conversation is that there is a need for us to continue to focus on social justice. And that is exactly the work that I do. So my work is really around increasing equity for patients through self-reflective and conscious nurses, right? So I do that by really giving nurses the tools and the skills that they need to really understand how to practice socially just care in a leadership capacity. There's not many people that are out there doing the work that I do. All of my work is completely online. Hey Mike, good to see you on. All of my work is online, and it's 12 credits to this amazing online course that's all about you as a nurse and you being influential, because I just think that we need more skills around it. So let's unpack this topic a little bit more. For those that just joined again, the topic is, have we achieved equity in nursing? A look back and a look forward. So when I start to think about equity, the first thing that I think about is inequity, right? Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? So inequity and really creating the pathway to equity is about removing barriers, right? So it's about removing barriers, not just in health, which is what I want nurses to really tap into. I want us to tap into that we get to be across the whole continuum of care for our patients. So it's not just removing barriers in health, it's removing gaps in pay. It's removing barriers towards wealth, poverty, discrimination, actually increasing fair pay and quality education. Sometimes I feel like as nurses, we forget that all of our work has to do with the health and wellness of the entire community. And the more work that I do in community-based nursing, which is what I'm doing with the JOCS initiative right now, and through the work that I do with Transform Nursing right now, the more I realize that nurses are pivotal when it comes to actually starting these conversations about equity, not only in the nursing profession, but for our patients as well. So what I wanted to do is take a quick look back at what we've accomplished in nursing and where we are today when it comes to just the way the demographics of nursing has shaped up. So there are 3 million nurses in the United States that practice, which is awesome. 20 million globally, right? 25% of the nurses that are practicing right now are from racial and ethnic groups in this country. Now, 38% of the population are from racial and ethnic groups. So you can see that there's a bit of a gap there, but it looks like we're working to sort of close that gap. So what I can say is that nursing schools are doing a really great job at enrolling and recruiting nurses into the profession. Like, we're getting more nurses to come in, and we can talk about the shortage and the gaps and all that stuff on another live altogether. But we're doing our best to sort of meet some of the things that we're looking at as barriers right now, which is we don't have enough nurses in the profession. However, when we take a closer look, just in terms of equity, in terms of ethnic and racial diversity, only about 13% of nurses are from our advanced practice registered nurses, right? So like myself, someone who has completed a master's degree and has gone on to sort of more management kind of level things. And so thank you, Kima, for posting that information of where we work. Yes, at Jack's Initiative Lincolnshire Care Plus program is a program that I manage. And so one thing that's really challenging is what is happening to really create equity inside of nursing programs so that those nurses that are coming and matriculating from a different socioeconomic background and sort of a different space economically, what is keeping them in school? Can anybody answer that question? Because I can't. What I know is that I was a clinical instructor at Hopkins for a couple of years, and we had a really hard time, from what I could see, from what students were reporting to me, with getting these nurses of color and sort of people who felt like they were different and other to stay in school, right? To be retained. And I'm sure the same can be said of nurses who have children or have a second job or, have these other barriers. So what are we sort of doing to address those barriers for people who are just sort of different? Hey, Christina, thanks for joining the live. And Catherine, good to see you on too. And so what are we doing to really address some of those barriers for the nurses that are in nursing school who may have a different linguistic identity or cultural identity, right? Or have a different learning style? How are we adapting our curriculum to create equity across the board? I haven't seen many conversations about that, so if you know more about it, please let me know. I am wanting to see that kind of work. I want to see that happen. But the biggest thing, hey Janice, good to see you on. The biggest thing that I focus on is really leadership in nursing, right? Because leadership really spans the gap for all of the work that we do. I looked at a study recently that talked about opinion leaders, and these opinion leaders were essentially saying that of all these different groups, including physicians and nurses, even patients, that patients and nurses were going to have the least amount of influence on health policy reform in the next 5 to 10 years. They said nurses were going to have the least amount of impact or influence on health policy reform in the next 5 to 10 years. And that concerned me, because what it said to me is that we're not being perceived as the key decision makers that we are. We're not really seen for the key advocacy work that we do, and we're not really seen for all of the great leadership potential that we have. And we have so much. And so the work that I do is really to help nurses tap in, to identify the leadership potential that they have inside of them, to cultivate that and to develop that across the board so that we can achieve equity inside of the nursing profession and for our patients as well. So our patients depend upon us, not only for compassion, which we are wonderful at being compassionate for our patients, but they depend on us to be culturally sensitive to their needs as well, right? Yes, exactly. Invisible nurses. So they depend upon us to be sensitive to their needs. And the only way we can really do that is if we are aware as well. If we understand the barriers that they have to accessing care. So many of our patients that we served when I worked at Hopkins were coming from such underrepresented groups and underprivileged, and it was just really tricky for me to send these patients right back out into the environments that they were in, with poor housing, unsafe schools, unsafe neighborhoods, and just sort of tell them, hey, you got to control your hypertension though, right? Like, we got to do better. We have to do better than health promotion. What we really need to think about is, how do we really create that level of equity? At this conference that I attended that I alluded to earlier yesterday and was a panelist for, there was a wonderful, wonderful slide, I wish I could show it to you, that showed 4 different types of progress, right? So it started with reality, then equality, then equity, then liberation. And as we can imagine, in reality, there are some people in our demographics and society who have all of these advantages, right? And so it was represented by boxes that were stacked on top of each other. And this person was way up here, and there was another person and another person. And there was a fence. And the person who had all this advantage, they were well able to see over the fence. The person who had, some could sort of barely see over the fence, but that little short person, nothing. Then you move to equality. And equality, you make the box the same, right? But people still can't see over because there's some people that are a little bit shorter, some people a little taller. Then you move to equity, where you adjust the box height so people can see over the fence. And then the last and my favorite, which I've never seen before, was liberation. Liberation, in which you remove the fence entirely, thus removing the need for the boxes. That's where we need to go. That's where the conversation needs to hone in on. And I believe that because nurses are so critical in our profession, such incredible, sensitive, amazing decision makers, that we need to have our voice be shared. So let's look forward. What do we need to do? We need to increase the kinds of mentorship that we practice, right, Janice? Right, Catherine? Right, Mike? All of you that have precepted before, we know how important and valuable mentorship and preceptorship is. We need more of that so we can build in better leadership pathways and structures for new nurses that are coming in, and even nurses who have been in the profession for a while. We also need more representation from folks who are in racial and ethnic groups different than dominant culture. We need that because it needs to be reflective. So people like me who are coming into nursing school can see other faculty members who have made it. We can see nurse executives who have arrived, right? We need the examples there so that we feel like we too can also succeed. Right, Shannon, the decision makers, exactly. And another thing that we need is increased policies that support inclusive leadership. If you want to learn more about inclusive leadership, check out my blog posts that I do. I talk all about it. Check out my podcast that I do. It's really, really important to all of the work that we do. It's foundational. It's a critical aspect, and it's something that we have to shift into. So our conversations, even in nursing school, to create equity, have to even shift to different models of leadership. So we have to shift away from the traditional sort of hierarchical structure to more collaborative, inclusive, and transformational, right? And that's kind of the work that I'm doing. So what I want to say to you now is, check me out. Check out my website. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, all of them. My website is posted here in the comments section, but it's www.transformnursing.com. And I would love to invite one of you amazing nurses or other social entrepreneur leaders onto my podcast to share with me about what you think is important, what you think matter, and what your perspective is. So if you want to learn more about my podcast, Shannon, yes, she dropped it. Thank you. There's a link to my podcast. So if you're interested, check out the podcast. And you can also contact me and say, hey, Nikki, I got something that I really want to share. I know a little bit about this, or I know a little bit about that. All right. Thank you so much for joining me live today. You guys are amazing. Nurses are wonderful. Please share the word with other people who did not get a chance to see this live. I think we need more nurses that are passionate about this work, and you guys are there to kickstart it. I hope you have a wonderful Friday afternoon. It is beautiful here in Baltimore. I hope you enjoy your day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.